Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Hi, I'm Pastor Mark Squire from Iowa.
And I'm Pastor Nathan Scheck in Washington.
We welcome you back to our journey through the many different ways that God's Word describes the beautiful news of Jesus. Over the past several weeks, we've considered different gospel metaphors: birth, life, healing, all of which are grouped together under the umbrella of God's creation. So today we consider another creation metaphor: light. We're used to thinking of light as a metaphor already. You've probably said or heard something like, "A light went off in my head," when you had an idea. But let's first think about how important light literally is.
Right. So light appears right away in the scriptures. It's in the very first chapter of the Bible where we hear God creating the entire universe. The first day he spends creating, forming, and filling. He says, "Let there be light," and there is light. And it says God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness.
Light is created first because it's essential to all else that's been made. Without it, there's simply no life. We wouldn't be able to mark the flow of time. Plants couldn't grow to feed animals. Animals couldn't move around to find food or shelter or to avoid danger. And people couldn't do the work that they were created to do as God's image bearers, caring for creation and caring for one another as they had been given dominion by God.
So it sounds like light plays many roles in the physical world. Is the same true for the metaphor of light?
Yeah, so the idea is that light is a metaphor for the good news of Jesus, and it's a very rich one. In fact, it's probably one of the deepest metaphors in the entire scriptures, and it's especially important to the gospel according to St. John. With just one metaphor, light, the good news of Jesus comes to us with several implications. You've already heard me read a small portion of John chapter 8 where Jesus speaks of the light of life. Light implies life. Light also carries with it the sense of goodness. Light makes goodness visible, and it sends away the darkness. Now finally, light brings with it the understanding of wisdom or knowledge. So light reveals God's truth.
Okay, so there's a lot to this metaphor. Let's break it down to one at a time, and let's talk about how light is connected to knowledge of the truth. The last few weeks, we've talked about how each gospel metaphor has a corresponding sin metaphor. And if light is connected to truth, does that mean that darkness is connected to ignorance or foolishness?
Yeah, so the Bible often talks about sin in terms of ignorance or foolishness. In our natural state as fallen creatures, we find ourselves in darkness. That is, we can't see God and we can't know God. Paul puts it this way in his letter to the church at Ephesus. He wrote in Ephesians 4:18, "They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to their hardness of heart."
So you're saying that my sinful nature makes it so that I'm inherently incapable of seeing or knowing God. So I'm in my sin, I find myself in the dark.
Right, so you're naturally ignorant of God and unable to see him or know him. Now think about it this way. Have you ever driven somewhere you've never been before, but having to do it at night?
Right, that's no fun. You can't see where the next turn is or the next road or driveway. You can't see the street signs as well. You can't make out the addresses on the houses. And that's why we all are very thankful for GPS.
Yeah, exactly. So when it's dark and you don't know where you're going, you need help. So that's where light comes in. Light makes it so that we know where we're going. But there's also something deeper here. Darkness can mean not only ignorance, but outright foolishness. So Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 2:14, "The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness." And believe me, as bad as it is to be called a fool on any given day of your life, you absolutely don't want to be called a fool in the Bible. Foolishness is a synonym for a complete and utter lack of belief in God, despite evidence to the contrary. So two Psalms, Psalm 14 and Psalm 53, both begin with the same line, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God."
Okay, so if we carry this metaphor a little further, We can say being in the dark isn't just being ignorant. It means not even knowing that you're ignorant or even willfully being in the dark.
That's right. So without being told by God, without having the light of Jesus shine on you by the hearing of his word, then you don't even know that you have a problem. Darkness then is ignorance or foolishness. But the light comes by being the true knowledge of God and of his word. And the true knowledge of God means that you have faith in him, in what he said and in what he's done. So you can know Jesus, who he is, the Son of God. You can know what Jesus has said, I am the light of the world. And you can know what Jesus has done. He's made known to us the way of God.
Okay, so I understand how light can be understood as the beautiful news of Jesus giving us truth, the truth that we need to hear. But what about light as being goodness or being connected to goodness? How does that work?
So again, if light is goodness, then darkness must be evil in some sense. To think this through, I think we should see one of the most famous scenes in all of movie history.
Luke, you do not yet realize your importance. You have only begun to discover your power. Join me, and I will complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy. I'll never join you! If you only knew the power of the dark side.
As you saw, Darth Vader said, you don't know the power of the dark side. This idea of light as good and darkness as evil isn't something new. If something's good, then it's on the side of the light. If it's evil or bad, then it's on the side of darkness. And we see this in the scriptures too. Job said in chapter 30, verse 26, when I hoped for good, evil came. And when I waited for light, darkness came.
Right, so darkness is connected to evil. And there's this sense that darkness is scary. I mean, we kind of grow up with an innate fear of the dark. Kids imagine that there are monsters in their basement or in their closet waiting to grab them from under the bed at night. So why do you think that we make this connection?
Well, darkness certainly brings with it ignorance or an inability to know what's going on. And even more, evil hides itself in the darkness. So think of a thief that goes around and steals. When does he do it? Well, at night, because it's much easier to sneak around undetected. And even the most heinous crimes, like murders, for example, will often happen in the darkness of night.
Okay, so it's not that darkness is inherently evil per se, but just that it gives the opportunity for evil to happen much more easily. And do you think there's also then a connection between darkness and shame?
Oh, absolutely. So darkness, of course, can hide your sense of shame. There's a reason that all of those adult-themed stores off the highway never have any windows. And it's not just so that children can't see inside. Sin brings with it the sense of shame that needs to be hidden from the light. Jesus said, people loved darkness rather than the light because their works are evil. So when Jesus says that light has come into the world, he's saying two things. So first, as the light of the world, he reveals the darkness of sin for what it is, evil. Sin cannot hide any longer because Jesus has come to the deepest and darkest recesses of the world to expose it. Now, even more, the light that Jesus brings is his saving goodness. So anyone who's ever been wronged or anyone who has ever done wrong no longer has anything to fear. The light of Jesus means that we are forever protected from the darkness of evil, which eventually leads to damnation. Jesus calls this final place of judgment the outer darkness because it's absent of the light of God's grace in Christ.
I see. So we've been talking, though, the last few weeks that there's this sense that the good news of Jesus is good and true right now, but it will also come to its fullness on the last day. So the forces of evil and darkness are still at work in this world. And we can see this clearly in the darkness of death.
We can. So we talked about, for example, how plants and animals need light to live. So figuratively, then, if light is thought of as life in Jesus, then darkness must mean death. Job, again, is a good spot to look for this. So he says in chapter 17, verse 13, if I hope for Sheol as my house, if I make my bed in darkness. So you see the connection between darkness and death. But a much more familiar place for all of us would be the 23rd Psalm, where David writes, even though I walk through the valley shadow of death, which could also be translated the valley of deep darkness, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. So death is seen as the darkness of the grave, the chaotic nothingness before God formed and shaped and filled creation with the light of his word.
So when Jesus said, I am the light of the world, whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life, he was speaking metaphorically, but he was also really looking forward to a physical reality of life and light.
Exactly. So Jesus, the light of the world, was sent to bring us out of the darkness of death. Zechariah, you might remember, sings about this in Luke chapter 1 before Jesus is even born. In his great song, he says, because of the tender mercy of God, whereby the sunrise shall visit us from on high to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Jesus brings the light of the world, which means that just as God raised him from the dead in the light of that first Easter morning, he will raise us from the darkness of death when Jesus returns on the last day.
So that's why at the end of the whole story in Revelation, John sees his vision of the last day, and he says, night will be no more. They will need no lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever. So this light of Jesus, it will give us life forever, true knowledge of God and one another, and ultimately the ability to reign, to live out fully that God-given identity as image bearers and living in this new creation.
Right. So just as light contains all the colors of the rainbow, the image of Jesus as light is truly beautiful news. So thank you all for joining us this week, and we hope that you join us next week as we consider how the good news of Jesus can be proclaimed with bread and water.
Thanks, everyone.